if you could just pick three, what are the three biggest struggles guys have when they're dating?
Yeah. I mean, well, we've kind of talked about this a little bit before, right? And I don't know if it will nicely slice into three, but essentially I think what the biggest frustration that a lot of men are facing today is that, well, I guess maybe it can divide into three, is number one, a majority of guys just they're not the ones that are the guys that are treating women like crap and the assholes and whatnot. A majority of the guys, they're upset because they feel overlooked. They feel rejected. They feel like women in dating isn't even really accessible to them at all.
Which is upsetting. Right? Like, I understand that.
And then they feel like women shit on men in general. And they're like, I'm not part of those guys because you're choosing. I think a lot of guys are like, you're choosing these guys that you're matching with on Instagram or dating apps that are like the top 10% of men in terms of looks. And then you're shitting on all men because these guys are being jerks, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably the number one complaint that men have. And then I think the second thing that men struggle with in dating is that they feel like a lot of the values, right? The values that we talk about on this podcast, that women don't have those today in society. They see women twerking all over the place, right?
There's nothing wrong with twerking in certain settings.
In certain settings, but all over on their Instagram and
well, sometimes it's your job to twerk.
Oh yeah, sometimes it's your job, but that's I would say that's also part of the thing. Is like jobs like OnlyFans and
well,
and
we're not
like
talking about that.
No, but a lot of women in Western society today do not have good morals or values. Mm-hmm. Right? They're out there just freely like expressing themselves sexually, which might seem like a good thing, but it's not a good thing if you're a guy like looking for potentially a wife and you're like, there's no wife material out here at all that I can find, right?
Which
those women,
it's very hard to not. Like,
I know. I'm just giving you the thing, things, but women don't respect men in general, right? Shit on men. They don't need a man, right? Toxic masculinity, like all that kind of beats up on a guy, I think. And so I think a lot of guys are struggling because of those things. And then I think the third thing I would say is that they've heard the horror stories about divorces where guys have lost everything, can't even see their kids anymore. A woman gets bored of the guy and then cheats on him or, like decides to get a divorce because there's no penalty for her, but there's a big one for him, right? Like I think they've heard these stories of these guys, and maybe some of them have been these guys where they've devoted their whole life to a woman, right? Now, again, all of these things, obviously I have counters to, but I'm just giving you the perspective, but maybe they've devoted their whole life to a woman, worked hard, good job, tried to raise a family, and then the woman leaves them, and then they have no recourse for that. And then they end up getting screwed over because they lose half of their stuff. They can't really see their kids anymore, right? They never wanted that to happen. And so they're afraid. I think a lot of guys are afraid that they can't trust a woman and they can't even get a woman anyway. And so they're feeling really hopeless. And that's where I think all that anger and bitterness comes from, is that, they've been rejected. They, have this idea that women are only having sex with these Chad guys, which there's a lot of merit to that. There's a lot of truth to that's going on. Like a lot of their complaints are rooted in truth, but yeah, I think that they just feel like it feels hopeless to them. And that's where that anger and frustration comes from, is that this feeling like if you felt like you had no romantic prospects ever, right? You would probably be pretty upset. Like it's hard to deal with that. And especially I think that there's so much information that comes from other men that tell these men that they're screwed, and that they should just give up, and that there's no point. Women just want chads. Women just want this. All women are whores. All women are whatever, right? And so they're hearing all these messages about how Western women are so bad, and no woman is loyal anymore, and all women disrespect men, and all of these things. And they see the TikTok videos where the guy goes to like we were talking about last week, where he goes up to a couple and he's like, do you want to do a loyalty test and let's swap phones? But they only show obviously the clips of the ones where the woman's cheating on the guy, right? And so guys are seeing all of this stuff, and then they're getting angry and they're getting bitter and they're getting jaded because their experience is that their experience matches what they're seeing, even though they have very little experience. So I think that's kind of the chief complaint. So yeah, what do you think about those things?
Well, to not get into a different topic that I know we will get into eventually because we got into it this week talking about it, I'm just going to say that I hear what you're saying and I understand that perspective. And I feel like what I came to realize was that women also have similar sort of issues.
For sure.
Like we came to the realization together too that both sides are kind of upset about or afraid of the same things or struggling with the same things, just in slightly different ways sometimes. So I do understand the guy's perspective. One thing though, that when you were describing it, and I know you were describing it from their perspective, it just seems like a all or nothing sort of thing. Like all women want to do OnlyFans. All women are doing this. And just as men hate when women say all men are doing this,
right, exactly.
They are actually doing the same thing. I'm not saying that there aren't women that are doing all those things that you're saying. There are. I know there are.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, this, like you've even said, like these stories or this, like, all women are like this is also making them more and more upset with women and actually pushing them further away from what they want, which is to be with a woman. I mean, not all men want to settle down. I mean, I think they do to their core, but maybe they're not there in their point of their life right now, but they do eventually want a person to spend the rest of their life with. So I guess what frustrates me when I see these things, these comments of all these angry guys, is that they're not realizing that them even just leaving like a really angry comment on something is pushing them further away from their goal.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess too, like, not even as a woman, but as somebody who like has always from like a very young age, like worked really hard to get out of a bad situation or things like that. And people might listen to me say these things and be like, you never struggled, but everybody has struggled. Everyone struggles one way or another.
Right.
And so being somebody that when I did struggle, did I get upset or angry at times? Yes. But did I allow that to keep me in that position? No. Right. And so that I feel like is where men are kind of getting stuck. And I get that they're angry and frustrated by all these things, but I don't feel like they're doing all that they can. And I get that like it feels helpless and it feels hopeless and all these things, but you're not. Like they don't realize the power that they have. And like, yes, there's only so much you can do about your physical looks, but there are things you can still do. There's only so much you can do,
about
at
society,
a time. Yeah, about society.
Exactly.
But like your mindset, your like drive and determination and like, working towards something, that is something you do have control over. So I guess that's what frustrates me when I see this. And I'm like,
well, yeah,
like,
it frustrates
and I'm not
me as well.
saying they're not doing anything because I don't want to say that either because I don't know. But all I do know is if you're taking the time to sit on a post that you might not necessarily agree with, and instead of like giving your opinion, because I even mentioned in one of the comments, I'm like,
difference,
I don't have any problem with you coming in the comments and being like, actually, no, this is how reality actually is for a man.
Right.
I'll be like, oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that. But if you're just like, shut up, bitch. I'm like, I have zero respect for you.
No,
and that's the issue too that we've talked about in other things too, is that women don't have respect for men anymore. And I'm not going to turn this into a woman thing, but I'm just saying that like, those sort of comments, like you're hurting yourself. Like you think that it's making you feel better, and it does for like a second because wow, you really showed me by commenting that.
Right.
But really it's like you have all this anger inside of you that is pushing you further away from women. Because if you can say that to just some random woman, like even the woman that you like, if she does something to upset you, you're probably going to harness some of that energy
and sure.
give it to her as well too, and mess up your actual relationship.
Better than perfect, we stand.